Welcome to Global Information Security Society for Professionals of Pakistan.
Very much. Today we are talking about CISSP domain number 7, and that domain is about security operations. And you are using a Zoom client, and you have to switch off your video so that you can able to watch slides and the session in a good manner. Let me introduce myself. My name is Muhammad Ahmad. I'm the seasoned professional. I have done my MS Computer Sciences. I have done my MBA and B.Sc Computer Sciences from CIT. I have international certification like CISSP, CGEIT, CISA, CGEIT, CRISC, and I'm one of the few professionals having all 4 certifications from Osaka and CISSP as well. I'm the regular trainer and speaker for different topics, and trainer for the CSSP, CRISC, CISA, CSM, CGEIT, ITIL as well. I have expertise in information security management, governance, risk, compliance, audit, service management, strategic outsourcing, etc. So this is brief intro of myself, and during the session, if you have question regarding any query of the chapter, please send a message over the chat box, and I will be able to reply during the session and after the session as well. Okay. So this is domain number 7, and this is a security operation domain, and this domain covers around 13% of your exam. So if you're talking about 100 questions, then you will be able to have around 13 questions from this domain. This domain is a big domain, but we will try to cover as much as possible within this session. And if we are not able to cover this during this session, we will cover in the next session. But let's have 1 hour session. So in this domain, we are talking about understand and support the investigation. We will try to understand the requirement for the investigation. We will have an overview of logging and monitoring activities. We will see how we can securely provision the resources. Then we will see how we can understand, apply the foundation security operational principle, and we will apply the resource protection techniques. We will see how we can conduct the incident management. Then we will see how to operate and maintain a detective and preventive controls. And then we will see how to implement support patch and vulnerability management. Next, let me clear this one first. Okay, then we will see we will understand how the change management process will work. Then we will see implement the recovery strategies. Then we will see the disaster recovery processes, and we will see how many different types of recovery plans are there. Then we will see the business continuity, but we have already covered in the domain number 1. And we will see how to implement and manage the physical security. And lastly, we will see how to address the personal safety and security concern. So these are the main topics of today's session, and in today's session we will try to cover as much as possible. And if we are not able to cover, then we will have another session of this particular domain, and we will try to cover that one. So let's move forward with understand and support the investigation. This is 7.1 section, and investigation is all about, as an information security professional, you may encounter a security incident, and if you have a security incident, it will definitely is going to require the investigation. So investigator must be very careful, and they need to ensure that they are following the proper procedure. And if they are not able to follow the investigation process, then it may violate the civil rights. And then your investigation will be of no use in the civil court or in any court. So it is very important that whenever you are doing the investigation, you are actually doing in a very professional manner and you are following a proper procedure with this one. When you have a security incident within your environment, then it is very important that you all have a complete discovery reference model with you, and this discovery reference model will have around 9 steps. Let me have a pen with me so that you can actually check it out. Okay. So you must have the 9 step with yourself. So first of one would be having the information governance, the complete process in which you will have all the processes. The first step would be the identification, in which you will try to identify whatever evidence you are going to collect. Then you preserve those evidence, you collect those evidence, you process those evidences, you review those evidences, you analyze those evidences. So this is the recurring process. For example, this is going to happen again and again. After the whole process, you will have to produce those evidence for some in the court of law. So once the production is done, then you will going to present those evidence in the form of the report. And if some modification is required, then definitely you are going to recheck those evidences and you are going to recheck how the process has been followed. So these 9 steps will help you to follow the discovery process. The next part, evidences. So to successfully prosecute a crime, a prosecuting attorney must provide a sufficient evidence to provide the individual guilt beyond reasonable doubts. So that you must have a proper evidences with you to prosecute a person. If you do not have any evidence, it will be very difficult to prosecute a person. So for the evidences to admissible in the court, there are 3 basic requirements. These are 3 basic requirements. And what are these? The evidence must be relevant to the determining the fact. And the fact evidence seeks to determine it must be material. So this is the second requirement, that this must be related with the case. It shouldn't happen that the material is not related with the case and you are presenting that case to the court. The third is the evidence must be competent, which means that it must have been obtained legally. So if there is any evidence which you do not have obtained legally, then that evidence is not admissible in the court. So that is why it is very important that whenever you are collecting the evidences, it must have been followed a proper procedure that is admissible in the court. So we have a different types of evidence with us, and these are 3 types of evidences in which the CISSP talk about. First one is the real evidences. The evidence must be real. The second one is the documentary evidence, and third one is the testimonial evidences. And all 3 evidences types are different from one another. The first one is the real evidences, and real evidence is also known as object evidence, and it is actually can bring into the court, for example, a physical touchable material. For example, you can bring into the court the physical evidence, that is the real evidence. The second type of evidence is documented evidence. For example, if attorney want to introduce a computer log as an evidence, so they must bring a witness and they must bring some documented evidences. So that is very important that any item that is written can be brought to the court, and that will become the type of the evidence. The third evidence is called a testimonial evidence. Testimonial evidence is consists of the testimony of the witness. So I say something that is written on the stamp paper, and that is a written testimonial. So testimonial evidence cannot be hearsay evidence. What I have heard, I will just write it. That is not is acceptable to the court. So it must not be hearsay evidence. The witness cannot testify as to what someone else told them outside the court. So it is very important that testimonial evidence uh, uh, is uh, is either the verbal or the and produced in the written form, but it cannot be the hearsay evidence. The next part is the evidence collection and forensic procedure. So it may happen that during the evidence collection, you may have to do the forensic analysis. In this case, you first have to do the media analysis, and media analysis can be of any type. For example, you do need to have some hard disk analysis, computer forensic analysis. You may have a USB, you may have a hard disk, etc. So that is why you need to ensure that you are following the proper mechanism and you are expert in your own field. Otherwise, if you are not expert, then it may happen that the evidence is not admissible in the court. Sometimes you also have to analyze and do the forensic of the network traffic. So forensic investigator who are interested in the activity which is ever taking place over the network, that is called a network analysis. And the same may happen to the software analysis. So someone is trying to do the forensic of the application, what type of activity the application is taking place within the running application. So that type of forensic is called software analysis forensic. So that forensic analysis, or I would say investigation, is not only the computer, it may also for the embedded devices as well. For example, your IoT devices, your SCADA devices, your specialized devices. So they can check the content of the hardware of the embedded devices, for example, mobile devices, Blackberries, etc. So these all come in evidence collection and forensic procedure. Sometimes you may also need to call law enforcement agencies. So whenever you are trying to do the investigation, one of the first decision that you must be aware of that whether you have to call the law enforcement agencies or not. If at the first step you think you have to call, just call it. Don't do anything, just call it. That is the first step. When you determine that law enforcement agency should be there, then they must be called in. So whenever you are doing the investigation, if you are in opinion that you are not going to call the law enforcement agencies, then you still must attempt to abide by the principle of the sound investigation to ensure that you are doing the accuracy. Let me highlight this one. Accuracy and fairness of your inquiry. It is important to remember that following key principle. So you shouldn't have or never conduct your investigation on the actual system. Always have the backup of your system. That is very important. The second option is take the system offline, make a backup and use a backup copy. Do not do the investigation on the original machine, actual system. Never attempt to hack back or avenge a crime. So this is very important. If someone is attacking you, you do not have to attack to the person or to them. If in a doubt, call the expert assistant. You cannot be the expert of everything. But forensic investigation is a very specialized field. So if you think that this is beyond your expertise, get the assistance from the expert. And if you want to call the law enforcement agencies or the private investigation firms, just call them. Don't hesitate that what the other people will say. Call them. It is very important that you have the proper investigation and the proper resources with you. So once the investigation is done, once the forensic is done, you have to report and you have to document all your steps. So every investigation you conduct should result in a final report, and that document the goal of investigation is. And it should say what the evidences it has collected and what is the final result of the investigation. So you need to prepare a formal documentation, which is very important because it will lay the foundation of the escalation or the procedure of the legal hearing. So it is very important that you have the report with you and you document, sign, stamp the report as well. For the investigation, the CISSP exam also talk about the attackers, and we have discussed this in numerous domains of the CISSP. And what's the attacker? An attacker is individual who actually violate the security policies. This is the main simple definition we can have. So remember one thing: crime is a crime, regardless of the motivation. So attacker may use different techniques, but one thing is very important: crime is a crime. So whenever you are doing some crime investigations or the incident investigation, you may also need to define the computer crimes in different categories so that people know that which type of crime you may have. For example, we have a military crimes. That attack is particular for the military or intelligence agencies related. We may have a business attacks, that is attacker is attacking some rival business. We may have a financial attacks in which, for example, financial institutes are being targeted. For example, in Pakistan, recent attack was Pakistani attack. We may have a terrorist attack. So terrorist group is attacking over the internet to the other government agencies or someone else. We have the grudge attacks. For example, you have the employee which your company terminated him, and he will launch a grudge attack. And the thrill attacks. This is more of the people who are actually doing for getting some fame, or they are just having an extra time and they are trying to have some fun with the scripts and etc. And they are trying to start the attack to some other organization. So they are having this thrill. So this section was about 7.1 about the computer crimes and investigation. The next section, which is 7.2, talks about the civil investigation types. So, for example, we have a different investigation types which are actually admissible in the code. So it will lay down the principle of how we can produce the evidence that is admissible in the code. And remember, we may have different types of investigations. And CISSP exam talk about around 3 types of investigation. First investigation is the administrative investigation. And administrative investigation is about the internal investigation of your company regarding violation of the organization policies or procedures, and it may be conducted as a part of your administrative process like human discipline committee action. That is also the administrative investigation within your company. The second type is the criminal investigation. In criminal investigation, that is particularly conducted by the law enforcement agency, because that is going to be produced in the court of law or the criminal law. So that is why this type of investigation is very rigorous, and you may have to follow the strict evidence collection mechanism and the preservation processes. So if the evidence is not collected as per abide laws, then it may happen that that is not acceptable in the court. So it is very important that you collect the evidence in a good manner. The third type of investigation is the civil investigation, and civil investigation typically do not involve the law enforcement agencies, but rather involve the internal employees. For example, you have some doubt, you may hire some a person or the legal team to do some investigation. And in most of the civil cases, you do not follow beyond a reasonable doubt standard. For example, you hire some investigator who do some investigation and you try to get the evidences from the person. Then we may have a regulatory investigation, and this is the last investigation the CISSP talk about. And in this case, the government agencies may conduct a regulatory evidence investigation of your organization. For example, the PPA, Pakistan Telecommunication Authority, or the SBP, State Bank of Pakistan, may start some investigation against any associated company about the investigation, and that investigation will be the regulatory investigation. And they may believe that individual or corporation has violated administrative law and they must be penalized. So failure to participate in these type of investigation may result into the fine or the other sanctions. So it is very important that you must support regulatory investigations in this regard, regardless that is that is SBP or the PTA. So next, the CISSP talk about how to conduct the logging and monitoring activities. So in logging and monitoring and auditing activities, it will help to organization to prevent the incident and provide an effective response when they occur. So logging and monitoring, logging is all about recording the events that is actually happening within your environment, and monitoring is reviewing these events in real time, and it will be combined with the logging and monitoring, and this will allow the organization to actually track, record, and review the activity and provide the overall accountability. Because you have the logs with you, you have the events, you are monitoring it. It will give you the activity record, and it will give you the accountability of the person who is actually doing the activity. So that is very important within your organization. You have a solid logging and monitoring mechanism within your environment. So one very important aspect is sampling. So sampling or data extraction is a process of extracting specific element from the large collection of the data. So it will help you to construct a meaningful representation or the summary of the whole. So sampling will give you analysis of the sample data, not the complete data, but the sample data. It is very important because you will have millions of events within your environment, and you will try to sample those events. Then we have a clipping level. So clipping is a form of non-statistical sampling. So clipping levels are widely used in the auditing event, so it will define the threshold. For example, failed login attempts are common way in which system as a user can easily enter a wrong password once or twice. So instead of raising an alarm for every single failed login attempts, a clipping level may be set to raise an alarm only if, for example, if they detect the 5 failed attempts within a 30 minutes. So that is a clipping level within your environment. So we may have some other mechanism with respect to the auditing, logging, and monitoring, and that is, I would say, the keystroking. And CISSP talk about okay. So we have a keystroke monitoring. So keystroke monitoring is the act of recording the keystroke of your system. So whatever the user is entering on the system, it will be logged. It will be monitored by someone else. The second monitoring tool mechanism is traffic analysis and trend analysis. So traffic analysis and trend analysis is a form of monitoring. It will examine the flow of packets rather than the actual packets. So it will see the behavior pattern of the traffic, and it will draw some trend analysis of the traffic within your environment. Another aspect is about, I would say, egress monitoring. So egress monitoring refer to the outgoing traffic. So because we have CNC, command and control system within the environment, so it is very important that you also monitor what is happening when the traffic is going outside from your network. So it will help you to prevent the data exfiltration, which is unauthorized transfer of data outside the organization. Some common methods used to prevent the data exfiltration uh, are using the data loss prevention techniques or stenography or the watermarking. And these techniques will help you to detect unauthorized exfiltration of the data. So we have the egress monitoring. So egress is about data going outside from your organization, and egress monitoring is data which is coming inside your traffic. So keep the understanding of these two different terms when you are preparing for the CISSP exam. The next concept is auditing to assess the effectiveness. So auditing is a mechanism actually that will examine the compliance with your company policy, with your regulation, and it will detect the abnormalities and unauthorized access or the crime. So whenever the audit is being happening, it will detect some non-compliance of your environment. So they will ask the evidences, they will QD you, they will get the evidences, and on the basis of those evidences, they will draw the conclusion whether the company is complying with the regulatory requirement or not, or the banking or the institutional policy or not. With respect to the audits, we have very two important audits, and one is access review audits, and the second one is the user entitlement audits. So you need to understand the difference between the two audits, and one is the access review audit. So many organizations perform the periodic access right review to ensure that object access and account management practices support the security policy. And these type of audits do not verify actually what the user have access. Actually, they will try to verify that user must not have access privileges and the account is being managed properly. So that is access right review audits. So second audit is the user entitlement audit. So user entitlement audit is referring about the privileges granted to the user. So user needs rights and permission to perform a job, but there should be some limit. So to cap those limits, the user entitlement audit will be performed. And same type of audit will be happen when you will say the privilege group audits. So for example, you have some administrative group, you have backup operators group, you have salary paper person group, you have printers group. So you're trying to audit of that previous group, who is belonging to whom, to in which group. So you are performing the group audit, not the user rights. You will try to find whether this group is having a sufficient rights or least privileged rights to perform the job. For example, the teller, the operator, that type of access right reviews are called the previous group uh, rights review. Another important concept comes here in the CISSP is about the dual administrative accounts. So many organizations require administrators to have two accounts. For example, one to have a simple regular operation within your environment, and other is for particularly uh, administrative account purpose. For example, doing some administrative tasks, active directory tasks. So this will reduce the risk associated with the privileged accounts. For example, if you are doing any action with your administrative account, so if your account is being hacked by someone, so your whole infrastructure will be hacked. So it is very important you do the day-to-day operation with your normal account, and for any administrative or special task, you use your privileged account. So two accounts should be maintained by the administrator. Then we have security audits and review concepts. So security audits and review will help you to ensure that organization has implemented the security controls properly. And whenever, for example, the big four companies comes and they perform the security audits, or your internal security department perform the security audit, what they probably try to find it out. They are works most of the time they works in four areas, and the CSSP talk about those four areas. Is first one is the patch management, second one is the vulnerability management, third one is the configurations management, and the last one is the change management. So because it is being performed by most of the time by the third parties, then you should remember that the audit report must be there. So for the audit report, it may vary, the format of the may vary of the audit report, but report of the audit must at least have some basic content, like the purpose of the audit report. For example, the scope of the audit, let me draw scope of the audit and the result discovered or revealed by the audit. So audit report may include some specific information like name, date, list of the audited system. So it will help you to have a defined or a well-written report. So the report of the content may highlight about the problem due to which the audit has been performed. It may mention the events or the condition. It may refer the standard criteria or the baseline documents, or it will recommend probably and a solution and safeguard which need to be implemented within the organization. Guys, the session is going to end by Zoom after 2 minutes, and when you will be disconnected from the session, just try to log in after disconnection within a 1 minute or 2 minutes, so that you will be able to rejoin that session. And we will have this session for around 30 minutes more. And I'm very hopeful that probably we will have another session for this domain to cover the rest of the topics. So don't worry, the session will be disconnected shortly due to the Zoom time limit, and the same meeting number, same way you should reconnect it, and we will resume after probably 1 or 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. In the meanwhile, we will try to continue. So the next is about the security prevening the resources, and this is all about prevening the resources securely. So the meeting is going to end, and let's reconnect after short time. So let's start the session again, and we were talking about the 7.4 section, which is about the security prevening the resources. And in this section, we will discuss about how we can prevene and manage the resources throughout their life cycle, and we will discuss the different asset types like hardware, software, virtual, cloud-based. These are the system. So an example of desktop are often deployed using, for example, the imaging techniques to ensure that they start in a non-secure state. So whatever you are trying to provide to the end user, that is, for example, creating a user account, that is prevening, and keeping and maintaining until the user quit the job or retire from the job, that is the managing about the throughout its life cycle. So either you have your hardware like computer, laptops, phone, or software, or physical, or virtual even, for example, virtual machine, or the cloud-based asset. For example, you have PaaS, you have SaaS, you have IaaS, or you have a private cloud, you have a hybrid cloud, you have a public cloud. So you need to manage those particular assets in a secure way. So whenever you are trying to onboard some user, you are trying to retire some user, you must have a proper mechanism to process the provisioning of the resources. So organization apply various resources protection techniques to ensure that resources are securely provisioned and managed throughout their life cycle. So that is very important that you always have mechanism in which you provision the resources, you provide the resources to the user or the end user. So let's move this next topic, which is the 7.5, and we talk about understand and apply the foundational security operational concept. I'm very sure you are all aware of the foundational security concept, but to have just quick view, let's have a overview of these concepts. So the primary purpose of the security operation practices is to safeguard the asset, which include information, system, devices, and facilities. And another important aspect when you perform the security operations is the concept of the due care and the due diligence. Due care means do correct. Whatever you are doing, you should do the correct things. And due diligence means you try to detect the abnormality within your environment, and you try to correct due to keeping in view the due care concept. So it's due care and due diligence will refer you about the reasonable care to protect the organization assets on an ongoing basis. In security operations, another concept comes in, which is need to know basis and the least privileges concept. And need to know basis and the least principle of the least privileges are two standard principles which is actually being followed in every IT domain. Need to know actually focus on the permission and ability to access the information, because I need to perform the job, I need to have those permission. And whereas least privileges focus on the privileges which is given at a minimum level. So if you perform to have a backup of your computer, you should not have the administrative privileges. You must have the only backup operator privileges. The minimum privileges that you must have is the concept called the principle of the least privileges. And these principle of the least privileges grant only the privileges necessary to perform the assigned work, and no more privileges will be assigned to the end user. The concept of the need to know basis comes also with the entitlement, aggregation, and transitive trust. And so what about the entitlement? So entitlement is referred to the amount of privileges granted to the user, typically when they are first provisioned. For example, if you hire a backup operator and you try to create a login ID of that particular operator, then if you assign the group to the backup operator, which is the backup operator group, then that is the entitlement of the backup operator to have those privileges necessary to perform backup operation. So that is entitlement. Aggregation. So in the context of the least privileges, aggregation refers to the amount of privileges a user collect over the time. For example, a user move from one department to another department, and it keep the rights of the previous, for example, a department. So over the period of time, the user will have much more rights. For example, user is working, for example, in payable department, moves to a receivable department, moves to procurement department, then that will become the issue, that user is getting the aggregated rights or the access rights to the system. So that must be reviewed. Another concept term is the transitive. So trust relationship between the two security domains. So one is trusting the domain is trusting the B, and you are trusting the C. So that is kind of a trust-based child-parent behavior. So you have a domain A, you have a domain B, and domain B have a trust with the domain C, then you are actually trusting the domain C as well. So that is called a transitive trust. Another concept comes in this domain is separation of duties and responsibilities. So separation of duties and responsibilities ensure that no single person has a total control over a critical function of the system. So you will try to segregate the duties. For example, you try the checker balance concept. One person sign it, the other person have a different role. So a person cannot have a full control of a critical task. So you try to segregate the duties. Another example is the movie theaters will have segregation of duties. So one person sell the ticket, another person collect the tickets. So it will not allow the person to enter in the cinema. So that is the separation of the duties. Another concept comes here is two-person control. And the two-person control is called the two-man rule. So it will require the approval of two-person before a critical task can be done. For example, you may have seen this picture. For example, it has two locks. So two-person must come in to open the lock. It is same like if you go to the bank and you want to operate a locker. So one key you will have, the other key will the bank will have. So both will try to insert the key simultaneously to open the lock. So that is a two-person control. So split knowledge concept. So split knowledge combine the concept of a separation of duties and two-person control in a single solution. So the basic idea would be that information required to perform an operation is divided among two or more users. For example, the encryption key, the key. So key will be divided into two parts. So one part will be with one person and other part with the other person. So both persons will join together and they will encrypt or decrypt the message. So no single person will have a sufficient privileges to compromise the security of the environment. So that is important concept, that you have a split knowledge, you have segregation of duties, you have separation of role. So you are trying to minimize the impact in case of system is being compromised. Another concept in the security operations comes in is about the job rotation. So you may have heard the job rotation, which simply means that employees are rotated through the jobs, or at least some of the jobs. For example, in banks, the operations manager rotates every 3 years, for example. On a critical task, you rotate the person so that if this is type of detecting or the misuse of the system, and it is also behave like a deterrent control. So if employees know that someone else will be taking over their job responsibility some after some point in future, so they are less likely to take part in fraudulent activities. So that is also preventive mechanism or deterrent mechanism, that will deter the person to perform the some fraudulent activity. Another concept will comes here is the mandatory vacation. So many organizations requires employee to take the mandatory vacation, for example, 1 week or 2 weeks. So this also provide a form of peer review, and it will help you detect the frauds or the collision. So for example, same in the banking sector, a person need to get probably 15 days off collectively, so that the other person will take over the job, and if some fraudulent activity is being done or some misuse of the system is being done, there is a possibility that it will be detected during that particular activity. Another concepts come here is about privileged account management. So privileged account management ensure that person do not have privileges other than they need to perform a job, so that it may not misuse those privileges. So in most of the cases, these elevated privileges are restricted to the administrator and to the certain operators. So some type of task requires the user to have some privileged account, but that must be done with the extreme care. For example, the administrative account or the privileged account. So another concept comes in the managing the information lifecycle. So if you can see, these are the, for example, we will create the information. For example, this is a cycle. We will store the information. We use the information. We share the information with someone else. We archive the information for the long-term use. And if the information is not required anymore, then we'll destroy the information. So this cycle will continue forever. So not all data deserve the same level of protection, so you need to classify your data. So data classification is very important. So, and it is most of the time is published within your security policy. The government agencies have like top secret, secret, confidential, or unclassified, and the public domains have like confidential, proprietary, like sensitive, private, or public classification. So it's all very with respect to the organization to organization. That is not the case that every organization will have a same classification mechanism. It is highly possible that every organization will have a classification as per their requirement. So it's all up to the organization how it will define the classification. So next concepts come here is the apply resource protection techniques, which is 7.6 section. So concepts come here is the protecting physical assets. So physical asset go beyond the IT asset, physical asset, and physical security may include, for example, fences, I would say, fences. So whenever you have the requirement of the physical security, you may involve your physical security department. So you try to implement progressively stronger physical security control. You may have fences, you may have guard, you may have security cameras, you may have CCTVs, you may have these type of controls. So this is very important that you protect your physical security with multiple layers of the physical controls. You not only also need to protect your physical asset, but you also need to protect your virtual asset. So most of the organizations are now implementing virtualization. So for virtualization, huge saving is there, but you need to ensure that you are actually securing those virtual assets. Like you have virtual machines within your environment, or if you have outsourced your infrastructure, then those are also virtual assets laying over some Amazon cloud or Google cloud. Same is the concept of the cloud. You need to ensure that how you will manage your cloud resources. Also, the responsibility factor will vary as per your arrangement of the cloud services, whether it is a SaaS, whether it is a PaaS, whether you are getting a public cloud, private, hybrid, whatever type of cloud, the responsibility factor will be varied. So it is important that you understand the concept, how you can manage these cloud-based assets. Also, you not only need to ensure the physical security, you need to ensure the security of the media management. For example, the backup contains the data. The backup contains the hard disk, DVDs. So you need to ensure that media management is applicable. You need to ensure the technical controls or restrict the device from accessing the computer system. So these are the media management. It may have a tape drives. For example, how you store your tape drives within your environment. So you, at least as a best practice, you must have at least two copies. One is on-site and one other is the off-site. So if something goes wrong with the data, the on-site can be used for immediate usage. And if the second copy is required, then probably you can get the second copy from your off-site location and have your data restored. So this is about the 7.6. I think let's conclude this session for today, and we will continue with part 2 during upcoming session from this domain, which is 7.2. So if right now, if you have any question, you can ask. Otherwise, if you do not have any question, we can stop the session and conclude the meeting. So any question, just unmute it and please ask the question.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed, for your time and this nice slides.
So any question, if you have, do let me know. The video will be uploaded shortly to CISSP's YouTube channel, and you can check the YouTube channel and can review the session again and again as much as you like. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Take your time. Bye.